Chapter 14. Egan thrust his hands in his pockets and watched with great interest while I jerked away from Paige as if she had caught fire and said, "Nate!" Paige looked as much in shock as Nathan did. She took a step toward him, one hand out. He backed away, his expression deepening into hurt and anger as he looked at us. She kept moving toward him, and he took another couple of steps backward and bumped into a man who had just walked up and who said, "Well, hello, Nathan. Egan?" "Jerry Sweeney!" Egan caught hold of Nate's arm fast and tight, like a snake striking. "Paige, Tim, this is Jerry Sweeney of Telstar Records in Nashville. These are friends of Nathan's, Jerry." He herded us along in front of him, back to the steps of River House, and Paige and I obeyed numbly. I should have tried to talk to Nathan right then, pulled him away from Egan and apologized, if nothing else. But I was afraid that would mess things up for him even worse, with Jerry Sweeney already there. With the small part of my brain that wasn't paralyzed with horror, I figured that right now it would be better for us just to go along. "Yeah, they're real good buddies of yours, aren't they, Nate?" Egan went on, as if he were only making conversation. "Jerry, you can share a table with them. They've come to cheer Nathan on tonight. Give him lots of moral support." He handed Nathan through the front door of the bar and held the screen door for the rest of us, giving me that silvery grin. I wondered briefly what he'd do if I hit him in the face, but mainly I was in anguish over what we'd done, and desperate to make things right with Nathan. But the noise and light of River House closed around us again, and Egan got Jerry and Paige and me seated at a front table and Nathan up on stage almost before I knew what was happening. For the next hour, Paige and I sat in a misery of fear and shame. I can't remember many details. I can still see Jerry Sweeney's broad, honest face like a big baked ham, and I remember deciding that he was a bona fide A&R guy, not some goon in league with Egan. But it was dawning on me that Egan had intended for that to happen between me and Paige, that once again I'd let myself be used. And I remember Nathan on stage, pitifully alone, going mechanically through one after another of his own songs. His hands seemed as sure and strong as always, and his throat didn't close up the way it had done at the revival. But his voice shook in a way I'd never heard. It had changed completely, as if for the first time Nathan had no idea who he was, where he'd come from, or what he was doing. I remember sitting and listening and staring at my hands, and Paige doing that too. And soon Jerry Sweeney was doing it, a worried frown on his face as he listened to Nathan's faltering voice. The other customers were muttering, not even pretending to listen, and the noise level in the room grew. Nathan seemed unaware of that, at least, or maybe he was past letting it bother him. He plowed through song after song, just a big gangly kid with his hair in his face, hands that could do anything, and a treacherous voice that betrayed his agony. Halfway through the set, it finally occurred to me to look around for Egan. I'd been too stunned and ashamed before. When I did, I saw him in his usual position by the bar, where he had a straight shot at Nathan without being too obvious about it. And the hungry look was back full force, loathsome to me now as never before, because I was starting to see that it was what this whole night was all about. I got up and made my way over to him in such a fury that I pushed my way past several large guys without worrying about what they might do to me. I went right up to Egan and spoke into his ear, and he was so intent on Nathan that he hardly paid attention to me. "You wanted this to happen," I said, low and fierce, "didn't you? So he'd fall apart in front of this guy." Egan moved his head only slightly, without taking his eyes off Nathan. The tip of his tongue flicked in the corner of his mouth. "You shit! Why are you doing this? If you need to feed off him, why do you want him to fail?" This time he answered in short sentences because he was breathing hard. "Because then he tries harder," he said softly, "burns brighter." I don't know what I'd have done then, but I was distracted by Nathan, who stopped in the middle of a song, put the ovation down on the floor, and left the stage, going blindly past me and Egan through the door into the back hall. Jeers rose in the room as he disappeared. Egan blinked a few times, like somebody waking up. He stared after Nathan, then gave me a level look and went back to our table. I followed, although part of me wanted to run and find Nathan. But I had to know what happened next, and I couldn't leave Paige at Egan's mercy. Jerry stood up to meet us, his wide face sympathetic and regretful. "Poor kid," he said to Egan. "Stage fright, is it?" Egan spread his hands in charming apology. "I don't know. I've never seen him like this." "Needs a little more experience, I guess," Jerry said, still affable but making no move to sit back down. Paige gave me one desperate look, full of all her love and anguish for Nathan. "Nice to meet you," Jerry said to us. "I need to be on my way." "Can I at least give you a copy of the demo he's put together?" Egan asked concernedly, as if he still really cared about Nathan impressing this guy. "You can mail it to me," Jerry assured him. Even I recognized that as a polite way of saying he wasn't interested. I didn't blame him. None of this was what he'd bargained for, and he was wasting his time. Egan saw him to the door while I sat down with Paige. On his way back, Egan shot a sort of a cold, triumphant look, but he went straight through the room and into the back hall where Nathan had gone. Neither Paige nor I had the nerve to go after him. We sat limply and stared at each other. "Now what?" she said. "We can't talk to Nate with Egan in the way." "Nope, we sure can't." "Tim," she said, and closed her eyes. "Why did we do that?" "Because Egan wanted us to," I told her. "He wanted Nathan upset so he'd fail in front of this guy." Paige considered that in sort of a stunned way. "Aren't we responsible for our own behavior?" she asked finally. "Sure we are, but the impulse to do what we did came from outside us. We just weren't prepared enough to resist it." She shook her head. "No, I still don't believe that." "You don't believe in an evil force, Paige? You don't believe it walks around on Earth and tries to get people to fuck up?" And because I was speaking of the devil, I guess, Egan appeared beside us again, face pale and eyes glittering. We jumped. "I can't find him," Egan said. "I can't find where he went. Come and help me." At this point, I would not willingly have helped Egan do anything, and Paige probably wouldn't have either. But worry for Nathan got us both out of our chairs, and my mantra prayer started in my head again as we hurried to the back. Please, God. Please, God. In the dark hall, we stopped, Egan looking around wildly. I started to wonder if this was some sort of trap. Egan had enough power to send snakes crawling all over me, and to send me crawling all over Paige. Why couldn't he find Nathan? But in the light coming down the staircase, I could see he was truly agitated, his face desperate. I could only conclude that for some reason Nathan was blocking him out. "Is the station wagon still here?" I asked. Egan blinked at me, and then we all ran out the back door to see, Paige and me following him around the side of River House. The station wagon was parked there beside Egan's Triumph, dwarfing it. "Then he's around here somewhere," I said, and started calling, "Nate! Nathan!" The three of us separated off to different parts of the backyard, each one of us calling Nathan as if he were a lost cat. In the shadows cast by the single outdoor light, the whole yard looked unkempt and murky. Blocks of peat were stacked all over the picnic table, the start of some landscaping project that apparently no longer mattered. Grass had grown up on the patio, and the lawn was full of weeds, and the trees that went all the way down to the river seemed to be covered with a lot more kudzu than I remembered. I could hardly believe this was the same place we'd had those picnics. Hard to believe those picnics were only weeks in the past instead of years. At last we heard Nathan's voice answering us. "Here I am." He stood on the patio, his hands hanging at his sides, watching us as we all hurried back up the sloping yard toward him. "Where you been, man?" Egan asked, in the gentlest voice I'd heard from him in a long time. "We were worried about you." Nathan gave Paige and me the merest flicker of a glance before he focused back on Egan. "I just went for a walk," he said, with a sort of faded dignity. "Down the road a ways." "You okay?" I asked. Nathan ignored me, keeping his eyes on Egan's face. "He left, didn't he?" he asked, and I knew he meant Jerry Sweeney. Egan nodded, watching him narrow-eyed and pityingly. Nathan nodded back, and I saw him swallow. "I don't know what happened to my voice," he said, "but I'm sorry." Egan still didn't speak. His kindly expression never changed. "I know I've let you down." It killed me to hear Nathan apologizing to Egan that way, even though he was still being dignified about it. I can make it up to you some way." "Sure you can," Egan told him gently. "Maybe," Nathan swallowed again, "maybe songs for other people. I could write those, like for Jeffrey." "Well, sure you can." "I know you've invested a lot in me. I'll make it up. I will." "We can talk about it," Egan assured him. "Oh, I just bet you can," I thought. After a pause, Paige stepped forward, glancing at Egan as if she wished he would go away. "Nathan, I'm sorry for what you saw, and for what I did." "So am I," said. Nathan frowned at us, or rather toward us, as if he just remembered we were there and was having trouble seeing us. "Oh," he said. "Well, never mind." "You forgive me?" Paige asked him in the barest little voice. Sure, yeah. It doesn't matter now." Neither of us had expected that, and Paige and I looked at each other. "Nathan," I said, "we still buds?" Nathan frowned again, as if he'd have to think about what that meant. At that point, I started to get scared again. Something was going seriously wrong with his head, and I didn't want to push it. "Hey," I told him, "forget it for now. We'll work it all out later." I stepped toward him to put my hand on his arm, but he drew back before I could touch him, as if I might burn him. I saw Egan tuck the corners of his mouth in, not quite hiding a smile. "Nathan," I said swiftly, as close to his ear as he let me get. "Come on, let's go home. Just let me drive you home, okay? You've had enough for one night." "He's staying with me now," Egan said. "Remember?" Paige had stepped closer, too. Ignoring Egan, she said to Nathan, "Yeah, come on, sweetie, let's go home and rest. You've been working too hard now. You can sort it all out later." "Come on, Nate," I said, and she echoed me again, and we echoed each other. "Come on, let's go. Come on, come on." But suddenly Nathan was looking at us as if he'd never seen us before, his eyes widening, his hands coming up to ward us off. "No, you get away from me," he said, starting out low but getting louder with each word. "The both of you, get away!" He backed off until he was up against Egan's picnic table, breathing hard like a cornered animal. "You're the ones! You're the ones!" Now he was gasping for breath. He raised his arm and pointed at me. "Ever since you came," he said, "it's been you, the whole summer, and I didn't see." It hit me what he meant then. He thought I was the evil one after all. Whether it was his own deduction or whether Egan had fed it to him, I never knew. "You came here to shut me down, to get in my way, to hurt me, and now you've got Paige to do it too." "No," Paige protested. "The two of you," Nathan said, "with your hands all over each other. You wanted me to see that, didn't you? You wanted to tear me down." He fumbled in his jeans pockets and threw the car keys at me. They fell onto the patio a little way past me. "Take the damn car home. I don't want it here. I don't want anything you ever touched." "Nathan," at last I found my voice, "it's not me or Paige either. It's Egan. I've told you all along." But this just added fuel to his fire, and he screamed at me and Paige both. "Get away from me! Get out of here! Get out!" He kept screaming that, and with Egan standing there, watching the whole thing as calm as a judge, and Paige white and frozen in shock, I saw it was no use, and I turned around and picked up the car keys. As I did, I felt something hit me on the back of the head. Nathan had grabbed up one of the peat blocks from the picnic table and thrown it at me. When I straightened up in surprise, he threw another. "Get away! Get away! Get away from me!" And we did, Paige and me, running around the corner of River House, running in defeat, while Nathan's ragged voice followed us and Egan's laugh rang in my ears. The stage is darker now, and time is short. The craft is farther now from reaching port. The sign that points both ways, the coin that's tossed. Please come and find me before I keep getting lost. Always believed you were there in the song, then take my bow to find I've done it wrong. Can't trace my steps so far, can't bear the cost. Won't you come and find me before I keep getting lost? End of the summer days and end of the street, sound of the autumn rain and sound of defeat. Now blooms the final flower, now comes the frost. Oh, come and find me, for I keep getting lost. Again, I'm not certain who Nathan was talking to. Surely he didn't think Egan could still save him. Surely he was talking to God. But pain twists inside me at the idea that he might still have been child enough to want somebody human, Paige or his dad or me, to rescue him and make everything okay, in spite of the fact that he'd lost trust in us, pushed us away. My throat tightens and tears hum behind my eyes when I think that none of us could do that for him.